Think the fridge keeps all your food fresh? Think again. Here's why seniors should never refrigerate these 10 common foods. 1. Tomatoes. The fridge is their enemy. I used to think tomatoes were like any other fruit or veggie. Pop them in the fridge and they'd last longer, right? Boy, was I wrong. Tomatoes are one of those foods that seriously hate being refrigerated. I learned this the hard way after grabbing what I thought were fresh, juicy tomatoes from the fridge, only to find them mealy, flavorless, and just sad. The cold temperature breaks down the tomato's internal structure. It causes the cell membranes inside to collapse, turning that once firm, vibrant fruit into something mushy and kind of tasteless. The best way to describe it is like eating a tomato-flavored sponge. Have you ever bitten into a refrigerated tomato and thought, where did the flavor go? That's the cold killing the tomato's natural zing. But here's the kicker. If you keep tomatoes at room temperature, they actually continue ripening naturally, making them taste sweeter and juicier. I keep mine on the counter, ideally in a spot that's cool and shaded, but not in direct sunlight. And I make sure to put them stem side down. That helps prevent moisture from escaping and speeds ripening evenly. Also, I learned that storing tomatoes near fruits like bananas or apples is a no-go. Those fruits release ethylene gas, which speeds up ripening, making tomatoes spoil faster. So, separating tomatoes from these ripeners keeps them fresher longer. Now, I get some people live in hot climates where leaving tomatoes out might not seem ideal. But trust me, even then, a cool, shaded spot beats the fridge any day. And if you have tomatoes that are already fully ripe and you want to hold on to them for just a day or two, refrigerating them briefly is okay, but definitely not as a regular thing. Think of it like this. Tomatoes are like a delicate piece of art. They need the right environment to shine. When you respect that, you get amazing flavor, better texture, and a fresher eating experience. And honestly, once you taste a properly ripened tomato that's been stored right, going back to fridge tomatoes feels like a downgrade. 2. Potatoes. Keep them cool, but not cold. Potatoes have always been a staple in my kitchen, but I had no idea the fridge could wreck them until I made that classic mistake. I wanted to keep my potatoes fresh and thought the fridge was the safe bet. Nope, big mistake. Here's what happens. When you put potatoes in the fridge, the starches in them convert to sugars at a much faster rate. That means the texture changes, and when you cook them, instead of that fluffy, creamy interior, you get something gritty and overly sweet. It totally ruins the experience. I tried making mashed potatoes from fridge-cold potatoes once, and it tasted off, like they'd turned sweet in a weird way. Potatoes actually prefer cool, dark, and dry places, not the icy chill of the fridge. I found that my best bet is a pantry, a cupboard away from heat, or even a cool basement if you have one. They also need good airflow. That's why I toss mine in a paper bag or a mesh basket instead of plastic bags, which trap moisture and cause them to rot or sprout faster. Speaking of sprouting, when potatoes get cold, the sugars build up and they start sprouting sooner. Those sprouts are toxic, so it's best to avoid the fridge altogether. Also, a little kitchen hack. Potatoes and onions do not like to be roommates. Storing them together releases gases and moisture that make both spoil faster. I learned this the hard way. When my onions went soft at the same time, my potatoes started rotting. So keep them separate for the win. One last thing, if you want to extend potato life even more, make sure to inspect them regularly and remove any that look bruised or soft to prevent spoilage from spreading. Potatoes are versatile, delicious, and a kitchen hero, but only if you treat them right. Cold fridge air is their enemy. Cool, dark, breathable spots are their best friends. 3. Onions, dry and dark, is the way. I've always had onions on hand because they add such an incredible flavor punch to almost any dish. But for the longest time, I kept mine in the fridge, thinking it would make them last longer. Turns out, the fridge is the last place onions want to be. Onions hate moisture, and the fridge is full of it. When onions are refrigerated, they become soft, moldy, and start sprouting way faster. Their skins get slimy and rubbery, which makes them unusable much sooner than they should be. Onions actually want to be kept in a cool, dry, and dark place with plenty of air circulation. That's why a mesh bag or a basket on the counter or in a pantry is the perfect spot. I have a basket near my stove where I keep mine, and I can see and grab them easily when I cook. Also, never store onions and potatoes together. I know it sounds weird since they're both staples, but they emit gases that cause each other to spoil faster. Once I learned this, I started keeping them in separate spots and noticed both lasted much longer. If you have cut onions, then yes, those belong in the fridge, sealed tightly in containers or wrapped well to prevent the smell from taking over your fridge. But whole onions? They're happiest out in the open, away from humidity. One quirky thing I noticed, onions can actually sprout even at room temperature, but it happens much slower than in the fridge, and sprouted onions lose their flavor and texture fast, so keep an eye on them. I also avoid storing onions in plastic bags because they trap moisture, which causes rot. A breathable bag or basket is definitely the way to go. Onions may seem simple, but they have very specific storage needs. Once you get it right, you'll notice your onions last longer, taste better, and you'll waste less money buying replacements. 4. Garlic. Keep it cool, dry, and free. Garlic is a kitchen superstar for me. It adds punch to everything from pasta sauces to soups, but it's surprisingly sensitive when it comes to storage, and the fridge is definitely not its friend. Garlic doesn't like cold, damp environments. Refrigeration encourages it to sprout, go rubbery, or even develop mold. I learned this the hard way when a bulb in my fridge started feeling soft and smelling off. The best place for garlic is a cool, dry spot with good airflow, like a ceramic garlic keeper or a mesh basket on your countertop, where it can stay fresh for months. Avoid plastic bags at all costs because they trap moisture and speed up rot. If you've peeled cloves, they belong in the fridge in airtight containers, but will only last a few days, while whole bulbs are best kept at room temperature. Did you know garlic actually improves in flavor shortly after harvest as it cures at room temp? That's why freshly harvested garlic tastes milder and sweeter than older, stored bulbs. Also, keep garlic away from potatoes, since potatoes emit moisture and gases that make garlic spoil faster. Pre-minced garlic in jars might be convenient, but it usually lacks the vibrant flavor of fresh cloves. Fresh is always best. And if you want to elevate your cooking, roasted garlic mellows out its sharpness and brings out a caramelized sweetness that's amazing on bread or in mashed potatoes. Keeping the papery skins intact is crucial because it protects garlic and helps preserve those precious essential oils that give it its bold aroma and flavor. Even if your garlic starts sprouting, you can still use it. Just pull out the bitter green shoot to keep the taste clean. Overall, garlic is low maintenance if you treat it like the kitchen VIP it is, dry, airy, and at room temperature. Trust me, your meals will thank you for it. 5. Bananas. The fridge is a no-go zone. Bananas are one of the most common fridge mistakes I see. I remember the first time I put a bunch in the fridge, thinking it would keep them fresh. Instead, their skins turned black and mushy faster than I expected. It's like the fridge basically gave them a death sentence on the outside. It's funny because the inside can still be okay for a bit, but let's be real, no one wants to peel a black soggy mess. That visual alone kills the vibe. Bananas hate the cold because it disrupts their natural ripening process. The cold causes their skin to turn black quickly, although the inside usually stays okay for a while longer. But the texture can suffer too, becoming mealy or mushy in ways you don't want. That's why you'll notice perfectly fine bananas with ugly blackened skins in the fridge. It's almost like they're embarrassed to show their true colors. The best place for bananas is at room temperature, hanging on a banana hook or resting gently on the counter. I like to keep them separated from other fruits too, especially those that produce a lot of ethylene gas, which speeds ripening. Apples and pears. Keep them away from bananas unless you want your bananas to ripen in warp speed. If I want to slow down the ripening, I wrap the banana stems in plastic wrap. That little trick reduces ethylene gas release and keeps the bananas fresh a bit longer. It's such a simple hack, but surprisingly effective. You'd be amazed how much longer your bananas last with just that one step. Here's a question. Have you ever had a banana with a blackened peel but perfectly fine inside? I call those the ugly bananas, and I usually use them for smoothies or baking instead of fresh eating. They're perfect for banana bread, pancakes, or even frozen treats because their sweetness is intensified. If you want to keep bananas longer without the peel going black, freezing peeled bananas is a great option. Just peel, slice, and freeze them for smoothies later. Frozen bananas are also a great base for healthy, nice cream, that creamy, guilt-free ice cream alternative you can make at home with just a blender. Bananas are super convenient and healthy, but only if you store them right. Forget the fridge for bananas. Treat them gently at room temp and enjoy their peak flavor. Another neat tip is to avoid stacking bananas on top of each other. They bruise easily, which speeds up spoilage. Instead, spread them out a bit or hang them if you can. Also, keep in mind that bananas continue to ripen even after you buy them, so buying slightly green bananas gives you more control over when you want to eat them. But if you're buying ripe bananas and can't finish them fast enough, sharing is caring, or use those ugly ones for baking or smoothies, so nothing goes to waste. Lastly, the skin color isn't the only sign of ripeness. A slight softness when you gently squeeze tells you the banana is ready to eat, while a firm peel means it needs a little more time. And if you want to get creative, ripe bananas add natural sweetness and moisture to muffins, oatmeal, and even salad dressings. So yeah, bananas are simple but finicky fruits. Treat them right at room temp, use these hacks to slow ripening or freeze them for later, and you'll always have delicious bananas ready to enjoy in whatever form you like. No fridge needed, just patience and a little care. 6. Bread. Why the fridge is the worst place for it. Bread feels like such a basic everyday thing, right? But when it comes to storage, it's surprisingly picky. I used to throw my bread in the fridge, thinking it would keep mold at bay and last longer. But the truth, the fridge ruins bread's texture faster than mold does. I remember biting into a sandwich and wondering why it tasted like I was chewing on a piece of cardboard. That's when I realized bread and cold air just don't mix well. Here's what happens. Bread stored in the fridge undergoes a process called starch retrogradation. That fancy term basically means the starch molecules recrystallize at cold temperatures, turning your soft, fluffy bread into something dry and crumbly. It's like a science experiment gone wrong in your sandwich. Even if it looks fine, the texture betrays you. It becomes stiff, dense, and kind of depressing. I definitely noticed this when I tried making a grilled cheese with fridge-stored bread. It didn't toast right. The crust was off, and the inside felt oddly chewy. Not in a good way. If you want your bread to stay soft and fresh, keeping it at room temperature is key. I usually store mine in a bread box or a paper bag on the counter, which helps maintain moisture without trapping too much humidity that causes mold. A good bread box is like a little climate-controlled apartment for your loaf. Keeps the airflow just right. And if you don't have a bread box, a cotton bag, or even wrapping it in a clean kitchen towel can help too. That keeps the crust from turning rubbery while allowing the bread to breathe. That said, bread does mold faster at room temperature, especially in humid climates. So if you're not going to finish a loaf within a few days, freezing is your best bet. Freezing bread is like hitting the pause button on freshness. You can even freeze individual slices with parchment paper between them for easy grab-and-go toast. Just pop a frozen slice in the toaster or warm it in the oven. No thawing required. Avoid plastic bags for long-term bread storage because they trap moisture and encourage mold growth. Plastic can turn your loaf into a moldy science project within days. But for short-term use, a plastic bag or bread box works fine to keep the crust soft. Just make sure it's not sealed too tight. You want a little airflow. One cool hack I learned: if your bread is getting a little stale, sprinkle some water on the crust and warm it in the oven for a few minutes. It brings back that fresh-baked aroma and softness like magic. The steam helps rehydrate the crumb and makes the crust crisp again. It's honestly a game changer. Another tip: Don't slice bread all at once. Slicing exposes more surface area to air, which speeds up staling. Keep the loaf whole and slice only what you need. That alone can buy you an extra day or two of freshness. So, yeah, the fridge is a total bread killer, unless you're storing banana bread or super dense rye. For most loaves, soft fresh bread at room temp or frozen for long-term storage is the way to go. Your sandwiches and toast will thank you, and once you taste the difference, you'll never go back to refrigerating bread again. 7. Avocados. The chill kills their ripeness. Avocados are one of those foods I always want perfectly ripe, but struggle to time right. I used to refrigerate them as soon as I bought them, hoping to slow down ripening and make them last longer. But the fridge messes with the ripening process in avocados in a way that makes them lose flavor and texture. When avocados are kept cold before they fully ripen, the process actually stalls and the fruit's texture gets gritty or rubbery. It's like biting into something that can't decide if it wants to be fruit or rubber. Once ripe, avocados can be put in the fridge for a day or two to slow further ripening. But if you chill them too early, they never reach that creamy, buttery perfection we all crave. Unripe avocados should always hang out at room temperature, somewhere cool and out of direct sunlight. I keep mine in a fruit bowl, and if I need them to ripen faster, I toss them into a paper bag with a banana or apple. Those fruits give off ethylene gas, which speeds up ripening like magic. I've literally turned rock-hard avocados into guacamole-ready beauties overnight using that trick. And here's a weird but true tip. If you're trying to slow the ripening just a bit, putting them near onions, but not in the fridge, can help delay the process slightly. Once an avocado is perfectly ripe, I'll pop it in the fridge if I'm not eating it immediately, just for a day or two max. That buys me a little time without ruining the texture. But timing is everything. Leave it in too long and it starts developing brown spots and that slightly fermented taste. Cut avocados definitely belong in the fridge, but they need care. I wrap mine tightly in cling film or store it in an airtight container with the pit still in. The pit helps reduce browning, and I also drizzle a little lemon or lime juice on the exposed flesh. The acid acts as a natural shield against oxidation and keeps it looking fresh and appetizing. One mistake I made early on was freezing whole avocados. Don't do it unless you like green mush. Freezing messes with the cell structure, and thawed avocados become watery and stringy, not great for slicing. But if you mash them up with a little lime juice and freeze in portions, they hold up surprisingly well for future guac nights or smoothie boosters. Another trick? If you only need half an avocado, try slicing vertically rather than the traditional way. It helps preserve more of the flesh for storage. Avocados are finicky but rewarding, like high-maintenance friends who make up for it with their amazing personality. Handle them right. Keep them at room temp until they're ready. Refrigerate only when necessary, and avoid freezing unless you're prepping spreads. Do all that, and you'll unlock the full, creamy, flavorful potential every single time. 8. Coffee beans. Keep them out of the cold. Coffee beans are like gold in my kitchen. They're sacred, but storing them in the fridge is one of the biggest mistakes you can make if you want fresh, flavorful coffee. I once tried it to keep them fresh longer, but the results were disappointing, and I quickly learned why. Coffee beans are incredibly sensitive to moisture, odors, and temperature fluctuations. When you put them in the fridge, they act like little sponges, soaking up moisture and picking up weird smells from nearby foods, onions, leftovers, even cheese. Trust me, coffee that tastes faintly of last night's lasagna is not the vibe. And the worst part? Taking the beans in and out of the fridge causes condensation to form on them, which destroys the delicate oils inside. Those oils are the secret sauce behind that rich, aromatic cup we all crave. Once those oils break down, you're left with a brew that tastes dull, bitter, or just plain stale. That's why I always store my beans in an airtight container, tucked away in a cool, dark cupboard, far from the oven or any heat source. I even avoid clear containers because light can degrade the beans faster than you'd expect. Opaque containers are the real MVP. They keep out both light and air, locking in freshness. If you're serious about flavor, stick to buying small batches of whole beans, just enough to last a week or two max. That way, your beans don't sit around going stale while you think you're being efficient. And here's a tip that changed my morning routine forever. Don't grind your beans until right before you brew. Freshly ground coffee has way more aroma and complexity, while pre-ground stuff loses its punch within hours. If you absolutely must buy in bulk or store beans long term, freezing is an option, but it's tricky. The beans have to be sealed airtight, like vacuum-packed airtight, and you shouldn't open the container repeatedly. Each time you do, condensation can sneak in and ruin everything. Even then, freezing can mute some of the subtler flavor notes. Personally, I avoid it unless I'm storing a large stash for emergencies. Another thing I do is mark the roast date on my container so I know how old my beans are. Freshness matters more than most people realize. You've got about 2 to 3 weeks after roasting before the flavor starts to decline noticeably. It's also helpful to portion out the beans you'll use over the next few days into a smaller container, so you're not exposing your entire supply to air each time you open it. At the end of the day, coffee beans are precious. Treat them right, and they'll reward you with that perfect cup every time. Fridge, big number, keep them cool, dark, dry, and most importantly, respected. 9. Honey, not a fridge buddy. Honey is one of those magical foods that I use all the time, whether it's drizzling over my morning toast or sweetening a cup of tea on a chilly evening. At first, I thought keeping it in the fridge would make it last longer, but I quickly learned that refrigeration actually makes honey turn grainy and hard much faster. It's wild how such a simple, natural ingredient can change so much just from a little cold. I remember trying to scoop some out of the fridge one time and feeling like I was breaking apart a rock instead of pouring syrup. That texture is definitely not what I'm after. What's cool about honey is that it naturally resists bacteria and mold because it's super low in moisture and packed with sugar, so it basically preserves itself. When it crystallizes at room temperature, which happens sometimes, it's still perfectly fine to eat. It just needs a little warm water bath to get back to its smooth, liquid glory. I like to keep my honey away from heat and direct sunlight because heat can mess with the delicate enzymes and flavors that make it taste so good. A pantry or kitchen cabinet is the ideal home, somewhere dark and cozy. And don't underestimate the importance of a tight lid. Moisture sneaking in is the real enemy when it comes to ruining honey's texture. Over time, I've noticed that honey stored properly seems to get better with age, almost like it develops a deeper, richer flavor. Also, if you buy raw or unfiltered honey, it might crystallize sooner than processed varieties, but that's just nature doing its thing. Another handy trick I picked up is using honey jars that aren't too wide-mouthed. This limits air exposure and keeps the honey fresher. Plus, honey's natural antioxidants and antibacterial properties mean it's not just tasty, but also has some health perks, which I love. Refrigerating honey might slow down crystallization a bit at first, but the trade-off in texture just isn't worth it. And honestly, handling solidified honey every time you want to sweeten something gets old fast. So if you want to keep honey in its best shape, skip the fridge and give it the warm, dry home it deserves. Trust me, once you get used to the smooth, pourable consistency of properly stored honey, you'll never want to go back. Honey is simple, sweet, and resilient, but only if you treat it right. 10. Olive oil. Cold is not cool for this. Olive oil is a kitchen staple I use daily, from salad dressings to cooking. But I've noticed how refrigeration messes with its consistency and flavor, so I stopped storing it in the fridge a long time ago. When olive oil is refrigerated, it solidifies, becoming cloudy and thick. While this doesn't harm the oil, it does make it harder to use, and when you bring it back to room temperature, sometimes it can change the texture or flavor slightly. I used to get frustrated waiting for my oil to liquefy before cooking. Olive oil is best kept in a cool, dark place, like a pantry or cabinet, away from the stove and sunlight. The ideal temperature is around 57 degrees Fahrenheit, 14 degrees Celsius, which is cooler than room temperature, but not fridge cold. Heat and light are the real enemies of olive oil. They cause it to go rancid quickly, losing its flavor and health benefits. So keeping it away from the stove or windowsills is key. I store mine in dark glass bottles because clear glass lets in light, which speeds degradation. If you buy olive oil in bulk, consider dividing it into smaller bottles for daily use and storing the rest away safely. That way, you open smaller quantities more frequently, reducing the chance of spoilage. One thing to note, high-quality extra virgin olive oil has a shorter shelf life than cheaper refined oils, so proper storage matters more for the good stuff. Cold fridge air might slow spoilage, but the trade-off in texture and flavor isn't worth it. Keep olive oil happy in a cool, dark spot and enjoy its fresh, fruity taste in every dish. So next time you reach for that tomato, avocado, or loaf of bread, think twice before tossing it in the fridge. Your taste buds and your wallet will thank you. One thing I realized is that olive oil doesn't just lose flavor when refrigerated, it can actually pick up weird fridge smells if it's not sealed tightly. I once found my oil tasting faintly like last week's leftover fish, and that was a hard nope. Plus, if you've ever poured chilled olive oil on your salad, you know how it can almost congeal on your greens, leaving clumps instead of a smooth drizzle. Not exactly the vibe when you're aiming for that silky finish. I even noticed that cooking with oil that's been refrigerated can affect how it behaves in the pan. Sometimes it smokes faster or doesn't coat the pan evenly, which surprised me. Another tip I swear by is keeping a small bottle of olive oil right by the stove for daily use, while the bigger stash stays tucked away cool and dark, like giving your oil its own little vacation spot. If you love infused olive oils, like garlic or chili, those flavors can get muted or even change when chilled, so keeping them out of the fridge helps preserve that punchy taste. Here's a little secret. Olive oil actually tastes better as it warms up slightly to room temperature before you use it, kind of like a good wine. If you buy olive oil with a harvest date on it, try to use it within 12 to 18 months because even the best storage won't keep it fresh forever. Olive oil contains antioxidants and healthy fats that are delicate, so storing it wrong can rob you of those health benefits you're after. I always remind myself that refrigeration isn't a universal fix. What works for milk or eggs doesn't mean it works for everything, and olive oil is definitely one of those exceptions. So next time you're tempted to toss that bottle in the fridge just to keep it fresh, think of olive oil like a fine ingredient that deserves a little respect and care. Trust me, once you see how much better it tastes when stored right, you'll never want to chill it again. Keeping olive oil happy is one of those small changes that makes a big difference, not just in cooking, but in how much I enjoy preparing my meals. So there you have it. Those are the 10 foods seniors absolutely shouldn't be refrigerating if they want to keep that fresh flavor, texture, and nutrition intact. I've been there, making the same mistakes, thinking the fridge was the magic fix to extend everything's shelf life. But as I learned, sometimes chilling just messes things up in unexpected ways. From tomatoes turning mealy, to bread drying out, and honey hardening into a solid mess, the fridge is definitely not the all-purpose food saver it seems to be. And knowing these little secrets can make a huge difference, not just for taste, but also for how much you enjoy your meals every day. Plus, saving food from going bad too soon helps reduce waste, which is always a win. If you take away one thing from this, it's this. Treat your food like it has a personality and preferences. Some like the cool, some prefer the warmth. Learning to listen to what your food needs means better meals, less frustration, and honestly, a bit more kitchen magic. If you found these tips helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on more useful food hacks and tips tailored just for seniors like you. Also, drop a comment below and tell me, which of these foods surprised you the most? Or do you have your own kitchen storage tricks? I'd love to hear your stories and share more great ideas. Remember, keeping food fresh isn't about complicated rules, it's about simple habits that make a big difference. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.